Welcome to Leading the Way, Tech Talks That Shape Tomorrow. My name is Elizabeth Wheeler. Today I am the referee as we find out who's the smartest person in the room. I'm joined by Paul Spears, head of engineering, and Bill, man of the hour, Odom. Welcome. I'm so glad to have both of you here with us today. We are very interested in your hot takes, if you will, on Apple's latest release, talking about the Vision Pro. Who wants to start? What is it?
Well, first of all, I like the way you set this up, because up until today, Paul and I were really good friends, but you've said that we're going to be fighting it out. So I can't wait to see what our relationship looks like on the other side of this conversation. I actually look to you for your VR expertise, so I would defer to you to kind of summarize this thing.
Yeah, it is an interesting beast. You know, they tried not to really position it too hard as one thing or another. If anything, they're leaning towards saying that this is an AR headset. This is kind of the most simple way that they're positioning it, but it has the capabilities to be in that general category of just a virtual reality headset.
Yeah, although I don't think they ever actually, they may have mentioned VR in passing a few times, but they certainly didn't position this as a VR headset or even really as an AR headset. They're very much about the spatial computing.
Right.
That's the term that they're introducing.
So you said AR, you said VR, really quickly. I think VR is a concept that most people are really familiar with, but when you say AR and their positioning around it, that is pretty interesting. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, so AR, augmented reality, is the idea of, rather than creating a virtual world that you operate and interact with, it is taking the real world and then augmenting it, adding additional information, overlays, and visuals, and taking 3D art and assets and placing them into the world that you inhabit.
Yeah, and they just, obviously we're still at the demo stage here, but just from that, their pass through, which I'm sure we'll talk more in detail about, their the shading and shadowing that goes along, and the intersection of real world elements with the stuff that you're doing. So when someone walks up to talk to you, you're not surprised by that, because it actually fades into your field of vision. So if you walked up on me using the headset, I would see you in my field of vision without having to come over and tap me on the shoulder or something like that. So they're very clearly trying to make it so that you're not super isolated inside this thing, unless you want to be, literally turning a dial and make the world go away. But by default, it looks like the idea is you're in the world, and the world is better when you're inside this headset.
Yeah, and I think that was very intentional that they didn't try to categorize themselves as VR or AR, because they wanted an experience that allows you to seamlessly kind of go back and forth across that spectrum. But from a technical capabilities standpoint, in what it can do, it's kind of at that extreme end of, if we want, we can go all the way in on a virtual reality experience.
Yeah. When they first started showing it to people, all you could see was the video that they were showing, and they didn't immediately talk about how they were representing the virtual version of the eyes. Mm-hmm. And for the first part of the demo, I was like, okay, is it like a piece of frosted glass that they're projecting something on, so you're literally seeing through it, or are they faking that? And they're faking it. They're just looks like they're doing a pretty effective job of it. But the idea is that you are looking through this out into the world, as opposed to, I'm putting on this thing and I can't see anything anymore, and no one can see my eyes. They're trying very hard. We'll see how successful they actually are at making it so that while you are using this, you are still participating in the world. I want them to be successful at that. Yeah. That is going to be tough.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is potentially a very stupid thing to say, but recently we just watched the movie Ready Player One. Have you seen it?
I couldn't stop thinking about Ready Player One the whole time.
Yeah, so I'm just...
That and Minority Report were the two movies that were running through my head the whole time that I watched the demo. And I will admit to my bias. I'm an Apple fan. I won't go so far as to say fanboy, but I am a fan. I'm very much plugged in and participant in the ecosystem and the whole deal. I want this thing to be successful. And the whole time I'm watching, I'm like, ooh, welcome to Dystopia 2000.
Yeah.
Very, very, there were some creepy moments in there. And Apple's not stupid. In fact, they made deliberate allusions to Ready Player One. There are shots in that demo.
I didn't realize that movie was big enough. Was it?
Spielberg.
Okay. I guess it's just not my genre. So like it showed up on Netflix or Hulu or whatever thing it's on this weekend. My daughter got into it and I was like, ugh. Like,
but like the opening shot where they have the guy put on the headset, if you flip that shot is in Ready Player One, where the main character is first putting on the headset and going into the virtual world. It is the same shot. I don't think that's a coincidence. It was very deliberate. Like people like me and Paul, they put so many moments in there like, hey, this is for you.
So the list price on this is $3,500. Is it for you?
Well, first of all, have you seen the video of the people who were watching the demo live at Apple? It's hilarious. Let's see if I can do an impression of it. Like, for a list early next year for a price of $34.99, whole crowd goes, ooh. And it literally sounds like a Foley artist put in a sound effect. And I thought it was hilarious. This is not a consumer product yet. I mean, I would say the me that it's for, or the you that it's for, absolutely someone who is looking to figure out where this technology is going, beginning to develop products for it. In certain parts of industry, $3,500 would be an incredibly inexpensive AR/VR headset. Like we have clients that they're probably calling people at Apple, can we get one early? We'll pay you double that. We'll pay you triple that. Because the headsets they're using that are at this level or better are in the $250,000 range.
It's more the industry. It's those use cases. I know we worked with someone who was using it for safety purposes. That's probably nothing.
For the people that
are gaming.
Could immediately begin using this or could immediately begin developing for the version of this that will come out 2 years from now. Absolutely. $3,500, that's a rounding error on a rounding error to those folks. It is not for consumers.
I was going to say, I think MetaQuest 3 right now is still is under $500. So,
but there is a Meta product, and you know way more about this than I do, Paul. That I think is $1,500 or thereabouts, or it was introduced.
Yeah, the MetaQuest Pro was initially announced in the $1,500 range.
And everybody was like, "Oh my god!" And to me, I'm like, if what we're trying to do is get the wave of early adopters and the people who can actually make this technology something that several hundred million people will buy, as opposed to several thousand people will buy, you're going to have to do that. And that's one of the things that Apple can do. They can not care about the price. Like $3,500 sounds insanely expensive, but that's probably pretty close to the cost of building the device. When you look at the technology that's in there, the sheer number of cameras, 2 miniaturized 4K screens, another screen on the front just so I can see your eyes blink. I mean, there is an insane amount of technology in that thing, and they're not making a lot of money off of it. I can't imagine that they are. This is for people who want to have a device that can do the things they've been dreaming a device like this could do, and beginning to develop for it.
Yeah, like this is like the people who are going to buy into this first round are those who see this as an investment of building the ecosystem they want to exist.
Absolutely.
So you talked about the technology, and you thought that the list price was pretty close to what it would take to build, meaning that margin's pretty small. Where is the gap in like the technology we see in the Meta products versus what we're seeing in Apple's line?
Well, there's the Apple tax that everybody will talk about, which is, if you're going to be buying let's say on the higher end of an Apple product, and this is the highest end, apart from something like a fully loaded Mac Pro, which also they just announced, you're going to be paying a premium for it, and Apple has never been shy about that. They do make more affordable products, but those more affordable products are the new products once they're 3 years old. They don't really try to hit a lower price for their products. So to me, where the gap is, and you know way more about the specific technology than I would, Paul. The stuff that is in this headset, first of all, it is not, as far as we can tell, attached to another device. People were talking about the wire coming off of the headset. That's attached to a battery pack. This is a fully self-contained computer. Now, it's clearly designed to interface quite seamlessly with other computers, but this thing's got its own M2 chip in there. The M2 is what's in your latest Mac laptops.
Thank you for connecting the M2 to what I should be thinking about it. I was like, an M2 chip, of course. I don't know what M2 chip.
Well, the very, very brief aside, a couple of years ago, 3 years ago now, if that, Apple began their big migration away from Intel and over to what they call Apple Silicon. And the first chip in that line, really the first chip in that line, were the chips that were in these things. And so after more than a decade of doing the A series of processors in iPhones, iPads, they took that base design and turned it into desktop laptop processors. And a lot of people were like, they're basically like taking a mobile processor to the desktop and to their pro machines. This will never work. And then it blew everyone's mind. The M1 series chips were such a huge leap from the performance that they were getting out of Intel. And it was a combination of, one, the architecture really sang, and Apple, unlike every other company in this space, they have an iron fist. They have such tight control around the entire stack. So software all the way to the metal, they control that, which means they can hyper optimize toward the platform that they're building for. So the performance of an M1 MacBook compared to the previous generation of like an Intel-based MacBook, night and day. And they've only continued iterating on that. And you're seeing the M series of chips begin to like percolate out into other parts of their product line. So now there's an M1 based iPad, for example. Now they've got an M2 inside of this new headset. These are astoundingly powerful chips. They're also coupling it with the R1 chip, which I'm assuming the R is probably for Reality or Reality OS. And again, it's a chip that is optimized for running the specific software that Apple wants to run against that chip. So this device that you strap on your face is not tethered to your phone. There's not a big HDMI cable stretching out to your desktop computer. It's a self-contained computer. And that is very different from the majority of the headsets that are currently out there.
Yeah, the majority of the field right now, like you're basically looking at Meta and Apple, and that's it. And there are
you got
things like a HoloLens from Microsoft, but that's not VR. It's nowhere near as powerful, and for the most part, it is really just those two players. And so when we're talking price point comparison, that's it. Yeah. And I think the key difference is that you mentioned that this is their first release, and that for Meta, we're working on the depending on how you count it, the third or fourth generation of their product line. And so they've had a while to, initially their prices were seen as pretty extraordinary, but they've had some time to kind of refine it, figure out how they want to sell it. They've paid off some of their R&D budget costs now as we head into the MetaQuest 3. And so I think that's a lot of it. And I think the Apple Premium kind of makes up the difference there, in my opinion.
In terms of like sheer technology comparison, like I don't know what the current resolution of the best Quest headset is, but I'm thinking it's not 23 million pixels 4K display per eye.
Right.
And I don't know what the refresh rate is, but I'm betting it's not. They're estimating like 80-ish frames per second for the Vision Pro. And
it ain't that.
those things are incredibly important. One, just for the usability of the device. You saw the demos where they're like taking a screen and making it like you're able to work in that virtual space. And I know that's a thing that you can do, like on the Quest headset. I very nearly purchased one just for that capability. I despise Facebook, want nothing to do with them, and I almost bought the hardware for that specific reason. How many monitors do you need? One more. Well, how many do you have? it doesn't matter. I always need another one.
Mm-hmm.
And a virtual space like that, I've literally been dreaming about having something like that for years. So when they did the demo and it's like, here's your screen. Well, here's another one. And you turn to your right and there's 6 more. That is for
It's a bat
someone,
cave.
for someone who does what we do.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And apart from the entertainment purposes, which they spend a lot of time talking about, just the productivity of being able to do that. And being able to take that metaphor that we've all gotten used to of, we're working in a virtual desktop environment, and keep the good parts of that in a virtual space, fantastically useful. But in order for that to work, you've got to have insanely high resolution, insanely low latency. It's got to feel extremely natural. It's got to feel as natural as, using the screens that you have here in front of us. And that has been a big problem with VR and AR headsets. People get sick using them. Like they either aren't useful because the resolution and the latency just don't measure up to what you need, or after a while of using them, your brain begins to go, dude, this is not right. And you get ill.
Yeah.
Well, there's this natural biological, brain evens out all of the micro movements that you make on your head that occurs with natural vision, that when you have cameras right up in front of you, like your brain knows it's not natural vision.
Yeah.
And so like every little head movement, like your brain is registering when it shouldn't. Yep. with the current generations of headsets. So I'm really interested to see with these higher specs, does that actually change that aspect
and
of
you saw
how we perceive it?
Near the end of their Vision Pro demo, where the father is playing with the child, or whatever the relationship is, literally there is a ball that they're playing with, and the father is like, catching and kicking the ball back. That is all aimed specifically at addressing Paul's point. It's like, this device has to be fast enough, low latency enough, high resolution enough that you can interact with the real world as if you are fully participating in the real world. If there was a quarter-second lag, which would be an insanely high lag, but let's say a 300 millisecond lag, that interaction would not be possible, or it would be very, very awkward. And wearing the headset, within minutes, or certainly within an hour or two, you're going to literally feel ill. And they of course, they're Apple. They're not going to say, hey, our product won't make you violently ill. But they did actually say, and this goes a long way toward reducing the strain, the whatever, of using a device like this.
Yeah, when I saw that scene with the soccer ball, I was like, I'll believe that when I actually try it myself.
I'm going to try that myself because I don't believe that yet. I want to, I really want to, but that there are so many moments in there that are like, cute, heartwarming moments that are specifically aimed at people like me and Paul who are, well, I don't think I'd buy that yet, but the fact that they addressed it means that they're clearly thinking about it, and they want us to know they're thinking about it.
Another one of those moments, you mentioned the multiple screens. The way in which you get to those today is really awkward. Like even with the MetaQuest, you have to actually have to be plugged in a developer mode, like out of sync from the normal OS mode that you'd operate in all the time. It's like jumping through hoops, and it's just really, really strained. And they went straight to the heart of that and said, look, in normal mode, you look at your laptop and you drag and expand your screen to whatever size. I'm like, ooh.
Yeah. And again, that's part of that ecosystem play. Like, of the people in this room, I'm pretty sure I'm the one who's probably sent more money to Apple, probably by a factor of 10, maybe 100. And so I've got that full array of devices, multiple Apple TVs in the house, 9 HomePods at last count. It's ridiculous. I can speak to my house and Siri answers. Lots of Mac laptops, and that capability alone, a lot of people are going, lots of other headsets have that. And I'm like, no, they really, really don't. Not like that, they don't.
I dusted off my iPad after that.
Yeah, I saw the iPad showed up today. I'm like,
well, I need to go ahead and break that out again.
And the fact that they're saying right out of the gate that if it runs on an iPhone or an iPad, you can actually use it within that environment. That goes a long way towards solving another big problem, which is these VR environments, AR and VR environments, as powerful as the technology might be, the ecosystem's simply not there. For Apple, the ecosystem is there now. And I don't know how aware of this you are, probably more than most. For literally years, they have been providing tools so that on your latest iPhone, you can do cool AR stuff. But it's always been kind of like, why are they showing me this on an iPhone? Well, those of us who've been paying attention know exactly why they were showing this to us on an iPhone and on iPads and putting LiDAR in these things. It's so that the tooling, the developer knowledge, the ecosystem would be ready. So when a device came along where it actually made sense to have this stuff, all of that stuff is there. There are fleets of developers out there who don't even realize they're already ready to develop for this device. We've stunned Elizabeth into.
I'm just sitting here thinking that I wished I
What was the
had.
question again?
that I wished I had gone and researched what Mark Zuckerberg was saying. Have you guys looked into that?
Yeah, so Mark Zuckerberg recently just released a note to the company that was immediately leaked, of course, about what his thoughts were on it. And to sum them up, it was like, I'm not paraphrasing. I'm not impressed. These are things that we've tried before, trade-offs that we've considered. Doesn't really consider any of what he's done here. Any of what Apple's done here is like new or exciting. It's just they chose different trade-offs, and they're looking at this as affirmation that their approach is on the right track. That they're designed for. We want this style of communication in this area of device wearables to be targeted for everyone to use. We want, just as we want Facebook to be a platform for everyone, we want everyone to be able to utilize our devices as being their goal. And so, of course, that's a lot of internal marketing spend as well, of like, oh no, it just means that we're on the right track kind of message. But
what do you think
his points are
what do you think
the
non-leaked version of that conversation looks like inside? I'll give you a chance and I'll tell you what. Yeah, there is no table unflipped.
Excuse me, I just helped out. Elizabeth helped out.
No, I probably, yes. I think the irritation was actually very clear. It's like, I didn't know what they were going to show that day either, because this is all news to me. This is kind of his first statement in that.
Yeah,
so.
I'm not sure what Zuck could have said, but there is no way that like, oh, this is no big deal. That very much feels like the reaction that people had to like the first iPod.
Right.
Although the people who were reacting that way to the first iPod, they meant it. They're like, this is stupid. I already have a device that has more storage.
BlackBerry and iPhone, however.
Yeah, exactly. Same sort of thing where it's like, for my own personal example, I had a Trio 650, TREO 650, phone, and it was similar to a BlackBerry.
Oh, okay.
Had a physical keyboard, a little smaller than this, a little thicker than this, but.
I thought you were going to tell me it was the phone that you plugged into the car that had like a Zach Morris vibe.
No.
You're going.
We're a little further along.
I just didn't know all the model numbers before the Razor.
It ran a version of the Palm OS, so it had a touch screen on it. So if you look at like a list of specs, the Trio 650 that I had and the first iPhone, the Trio was an obviously better phone. It was like does more, has more storage. I could put a card in it to make more storage. I mean, why in the world would I want this other device, which on paper was not nearly as capable? I used an iPhone for the first time, and my Trio went into a drawer, and it was done, because even though technically some of the specs, weren't matching up or weren't better on the iPhone, the experience of using the device was light years beyond.
Their usability.
Yeah.
Is incredible. I think we've probably all experienced where we see a child around an Apple device and they just get it. So kudos to their team.
Do you think that they might have the opposite problem here, where they've nailed all the spec requirements, but is this the right device?
Well, when you say, is this the right device, what do you mean? Like
for whom?
In terms of the ability to use it, like the technology may all be there, but the user experience is not good, or what? Yeah,
so one thing that I saw was the lack of controllers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Apple's known for
that feels very much like one button mouse
on brand, of course. But like that's a feature that has existed in the other platforms for a long time now, and I stopped using that because it was strangely fatiguing. Like if you think about how much effort goes into manipulating your screen with a mouse and keyboard,
Right.
You're zipping things around at an amazing speed. But if those micro movements of your hand now have to be grand gestures that require an entire arm and wrist and
Right.
delicate finger movement, how quickly is that going to wear you down?
Or are we going to become an incredibly strong group of people?
I've been
all
pushing
of a sudden,
for this for years.
Yeah.
I was telling someone at one of our recent meetups that I have been really pushing for lightweight carbon fiber armatures for developers, so that two things happen. One, if you've written an overly long routine, it physically is harder to work with it. You've got force feedback going on, and if you've got a really long file, you've got to physically run to the bottom of it in order to. So it would encourage you to write smaller, better code.
I thought you just wanted people who can where it's easier to flip boardroom tables.
That's the other side of it. I want programmers, after 6 months of being forced to use it, they'll be the most buff people in the world. So all the days of
programmer
getting
and an Olympian.
Sand kicked in your face because you're a pasty white nerd, over, because I have solved this problem.
You're more optimistic than me. The end result is that people will finally be good developers and write those clean, maintainable, easy to
Let me dream, man. Let me dream. But to your original point, I mentioned that Minority Report was one of the movies that kept running around in my head because of exactly what you're saying. When you're watching the characters, do these big grand gestures. Fantastic for watching a movie. Terrible for user experience. I, of course, haven't tried this thing yet. You haven't tried it directly. You've got experience with a lot of other devices this.
Yeah.
What I have heard from people that I do trust who were there and who did actually get time with the device is that you very quickly move from doing this to literally just using your fingertips. And the device, remember, there are cameras under here as well.
Right.
And they know where your hands are and they're watching what they're doing. And so you move from I am Tom Cruise in Minority Report to I am on my couch playing Wii tennis.
So
very, very quickly.
I'm going to say this, and because of that motion, that I was thinking it before.
Should I write down a time code for editing?
No, well, I was going to say Stephen Hawking, but the technology that they had for him, towards the end, the amazing technology that I think they were watching a couple of muscles face. Mm-hmm. And I think about, man, if you would pair that with a headset, then it's I really don't have to do anything. I can just sit there. And I have to say, from just the issues that I have in fluency with speaking, I was just man, that would be incredible. Someone just watch the muscles in my face to figure out what I'm trying to say. But you take that technology on the headset and change that into this is how I type, this is what I do. It's almost going straight from the brain.
Yeah.
Straight from the brain to.
And while they made
periphery.
Several allusions to what you're talking about, they didn't go full tilt into here is what we are capable of doing, but they are capable of doing all of what you're talking about currently. And you see some of that with they set me up for this. My wife and I were watching the keynote together and they did the FaceTime demo. It's you're in a conference call. I'm not going to be at a conference call with a ski mask on my face. And I'm so are they putting your Memoji in there? Because, of course, you can build your own virtual avatar very easily. It's super cute, and it works really quite well. I have sent many a video of me talking to people as a shark. So I'm are they just going to do that for your virtual presence in this? And then they're no, in fact, we let you you become a virtual avatar of yourself within the space. And then they've got to drive that thing. That puppet that they've created then has to actually participate in the space. So all the stuff you're talking about, remember, Face ID and all of these cameras and watching your eye movements, all of this stuff, there is so much processing power focused on what is the face doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
I know that right now, eye tracking is your main version of selecting something. We haven't even talked about that. It's I want to select the word on that screen. Well, I'm looking at the word I want to select, and then I tap my fingers together or whatever, and it's selected.
I like to think that it'll be a heel movement, so I can finally lick my heels and something will happen. You're like,
I'm sure that will be a possible add-on.
That'll be a choice.
And that actually, I mean, I know you're kidding, but the fact that, they don't come with controllers.
Right.
But they've already shown, well, you can Bluetooth your keyboard in.
Right.
So I think much like the pencil is an add-on for the iPad, but the iPad is completely usable without it, there will absolutely be additional devices that will plug into this ecosystem, some of which already exist, some of which don't. But if I'm an artist and I want to have like fine-grained control over something that I'm painting in VR, imagine the Apple Pencil being used in VR to draw fine lines versus something like Tilt Brush, which is one of the current painting tools that's out there. Amazing stuff that people are doing, but we are at the very beginning of those possibilities.
Yeah, there was a statement that was made, I think by Tim Cook, at the very beginning of, with our experience within, wearables, mobile devices, computers, AI, like listed out all the things that they have already been wildly successful.
Yeah.
It was like, naturally, we are already ahead of the game,
right,
in producing this device, simply because like we're already there.
Yep.
You just don't realize it yet.
Well, and as I was watching the demo, I kept pointing those things out, and I'm like, okay, that if you kind of follow backwards, that's why they were so invested in spatial audio for a while. Like I said, I've got lots of HomePods around the house. I've got a fairly recent MacBook Pro, and the first evening that I used it, set it up, used it, and then played music on it from all the way on the other end of the house, my wife is like, "Is that your computer?" I'm like, "Yes, it is." And she's like, "Seriously?"
Yeah.
And it wasn't just how loud it was like these tiny little laptop speakers are doing way better job than they should have. Take that and multiply it by every other technology area that has to go into something like this headset. And Apple has been doing that craziness for well over a decade now. And all of them have gotten plugged into different spots in that headset. I'm amazed it's only $3,500. I'll be honest. Eventually it won't be. The version that doesn't have the Pro on the end, like notice they named it Vision Pro. That leaves a lot of room underneath there.
Yeah.
So the version that comes out that is smaller, lighter, has some fewer capabilities, and is $1,500. And then 4 years from now, it's $999 or whatever the curve might be. And eventually, it's probably going to look like this. And you're going to be wearing one, you're going to be wearing one, I'm going to be wearing one, and we'll just have extra stuff happening in our
I will
space.
say, speaking of glasses, they at least have an answer for glasses.
Yes, thank goodness. As someone who is more nearsighted than a mole, the fact that they said from stage and named the manufacturer, we will be able to fit lenses into this thing from Zeiss. I mean, that's incredibly valuable. It means my headset's going to cost $5,000.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, lenses of the VR, like, couldn't you, like, wouldn't there be a way to, like, get your prescription, like, program it in and then, like, although it's not like your eyes, but, like, you
do have to have that manufacturing partnership. And I think that was something that they just did right out of the gate. And it's kind of risky in that you have to have a high degree of confidence that we have the right form factor.
Yeah.
Where, I think, frankly, Meta is still trying to figure out what their form factor is. So it wouldn't make sense to really begin that process unless they're willing to like go back to their partner and be like, we need to completely start over again.
Yeah.
Every release.
And notice also that, they try to say this in very positive, upbeat ways, but like everything is hyper adjustable. Like that strap that goes on the back of your head, that's, can be completely removed and replaced with a different strap. It's super, super comfortable. Something that didn't show in the demo, but people who were actually in the room saw there's a strap that goes over your head as well. They may be trying to make sure that doesn't end up in the final product. The piece that does the light shielding around your eyes, that is customizable, and apparently they can scan your face and give you a custom one as well. And then of course the actual prescription for your eyes, which for I think really the vast majority of people is going to be an extraordinarily important thing. It certainly is for me. I can't realistically use most of the VR, AR devices that are on the market right now because these Coke bottles that I've got on my face, I have to have them. If I take them off, I live here now. That's where I am. I'm never going anywhere else. And so that has to be a problem that's solved for me on day one for any device like this, for me to be able to use it at all, not just comfortably, but literally at all. But in terms of what it's going to do to the price, oh my God. Like, I'm not joking. These are $1,000 glasses because my eyes are so terrible. I'm going to have the equivalent of that inside the headset. But I'm glad that they have an answer for it, because it means they actually are positioning this for people to really use it.
So as far as like where Meta's going with their product, is this product that's accessible for everybody, that is kind of this connection to Facebook or this platform for the world. Do you think that Apple's going in that same space? Is it for the same people? Do they have the same mission?
Definitely do not have the same mission. Like, if you just look at the missions of the companies themselves, like they're just stated entirely different, personality of branding as well. And to be honest, I think Apple has made some concessions in this video around acknowledging more directly, and not just with the Vision Pro, but their entire announcement, like more directly, like the need to connect to and interact with enterprise and
I was
businesses.
very surprised by that.
They've really shown. They gave Atlassian a shout out.
Yeah, what keynote am I watching?
As part of that, so I think that there's some shift there. I can't speak to why we're seeing that shift, because they've done exceedingly well without it, and as they're now entering into a new marketplace, theoretically the same strategy should work. However, I did wonder, does this mean that they're worried that they won't be able to get this device like truly at that consumer level? Or is it going to get stuck at this is really only a play into the enterprise? I don't know.
I mean, the enterprise space is nothing to shake a stick at.
Right.
Like, that's a good space to be at. And it sounds like...
But it's very off-brand for them.
Yeah. I mean, Apple has amazing penetration in the enterprise space, but the way that it happened was basically by them saying, we're completely ignoring you, except that we're going to sell iPhones to your C-suite. Like, literally, that's how it happened. They did not care at all about playing in the enterprise space directly, as in like an HP or an IBM would come in and go, oh, we're going to give you all this tooling to make it easy to integrate the devices. No, it was none of that. It's like the CEO now has a new iPhone, and he wants it to work on your network, and you'll make it work.
Sure. And I think, there is definitely a large population of the development community who really like developing on Mac. There is, I will say, in the creative space, in the marketing departments of the world, UI, UX, they're in that space too. And so organizations are making those concessions, not concessions necessarily, but getting those tools in for them.
Right. I think it's somewhere in the middle between what you're saying, like, is this, are they showing how concerned they are they're not going to be able to sell this to consumers? They're not going to sell this to consumers right away. $3,500 is not a consumer product for something that's an utterly unproven market at this point. But the earliest computers, like before computers were a mass market thing, when they were still incredibly difficult to use, only for the nerdiest nerds, and I say that as one of the nerdiest nerds, in terms of like real dollars, these prices are about there. Yeah. Like, if you're talking the $500 to $1,000 that you might have spent back in the early days of the IBM PC, or less but still a lot for something like a Commodore 64, if you adjust the dollars, we're not that far off. I think of this as that kind of device.
Do you think this is something that you can develop on?
Yes.
So
develop on as in not develop things for this device, but just like develop on. God, I hope so, because that will give me the excuse I need to make this a tax write-off.
Because I was going to say, like, that's right, because that's not, I mean, I feel like if you're looking at a high power development machine, like, that's not really far off. And like, I'm going to be developing on the couch now. Or I'm going to be, or like, I'm thinking of it as being very attractive, like, I have to travel a lot. Well, let me grab my computer. It's just this little thing I can shove in my bag.
I don't think that we're there yet. I'd
like to get there.
Like, right now, it is technically possible to develop on an iPad, but it is a very constrained form of development. And this thing, I imagine, will probably fit, and this is complete guesswork on my part, will probably fit into that same space. However, coupling this with a Mac laptop, for example, suddenly it really does become a much more tenable development experience. I'm not joking about the ability to have lots and lots of virtual displays. And the fact that they're high resolution enough displays means that I'll actually be able to read the fonts no matter what scaling they're at. And this is something that Apple has gotten extraordinarily good at over the last many, many years, figuring out how to scale their UI across any resolution without turning it into a vector UI. It's still a bitmapped UI, but they've made sure that developers have to develop assets at 1x, 2x, 3x for a whole line of devices. And then they've gotten really good at doing the necessary interpolation to make all of that stuff work at whatever scale you do. And they made sure to show that several times in the demos, like grab the corner of the window, stretch it, push it away from you. So they're very, very clearly saying this is a thing that's possible to do, and it's easy to do, and it is realistic to do. So for someone like me who wants to be able to have a dozen screens filled with code, I am so looking forward to seeing what the development experience looks like. But I don't think it's going to be the only device that you develop on. I think it will be an adjunct to the device that you develop on.
I think that's my opinion. My prediction is that that's going to be the predictor of success for this product line for them. If they cannot make the Vision Pro and a MacBook work together to allow someone to comfortably develop for the lifetime of that headset, I don't think this will be successful for them.
And the thing I'm honestly most worried about there is not any of these specific technologies we're talking about, it's the weight. I want to know how heavy this thing's going to be on my head. And from what I'm hearing,
it's a chunky boy.
It's chunky. Yeah, you're going to know you've got to, you're going to be like a Wisconsin cheesehead, but heavier.
This is why I said people will have to lay down to get the weight on their eyes instead of on their cheeks.
And again, my wife, who spends a lot of time like watching movies on her phone, trying to put herself to sleep, she's like, yeah, this would be perfect for that. I'm like, okay. She's like, I'm not spending $4,000 to buy a device to make it easier for me to watch movies in bed. I'm like, but if you bought one, I could play with it.
We'll go halvesies.
Anyway, to the enterprise question. I really do feel like it was a direct addressing of the current market for this thing. By current, a year from now. The people for whom this is a reasonable amount of money to spend, that it is a reasonable investment to make, are folks in that enterprise and industry space. $3,500 for them, plus the amount of money it would take to actually make it usable for the 10 people that they would need to outfit, in their environment. I mean, yes, $3,500 is a lot of money. $3,500 is a lot of money for a consumer product. $3,500 is nothing for the kind of environment that this could instantly be so useful inside of. And they directly address several of those environments, manufacturing environments alone.
Well, and I was going to say, $3,500 seems like a lot of money for me to spend on almost anything, but, also realizing that there are people with like $35,000 or $3,500 handbags and $3,500 shoes,
absolutely.
and no shame in their game.
And some of those, I had a person specifically in mind as I'm watching the keynote. I'm like, I know a lady who's going to buy this.
Yeah.
She has no need for this whatsoever. Absolutely nothing. Yeah. But what she does have is money.
Yeah.
and like curiosity.
Yeah.
And again, nothing against her.
Right.
And I'm not saying
exactly
that she shouldn't get it. It's just she will be one of the people that will get this, and it will mostly be her looking at her iPhone inside of augmented reality.
Okay.
And she'll have a ball. She also spends a lot of time on planes. She'll probably watch a bunch of movies on planes using this, which is one of the things I want to be able to do with it.
What's the audio experience?
Apparently it's fantastic. Again,
is it like just quiet for?
Well, what you have on the headband, you can see there's a couple of little elevated areas. Those are speakers, and they're kind of aimed toward your ear.
Right.
But of course, you can always put in the AirPods Pro, and they will connect to the device.
That was one of those things that had me shaking my head at the competition. Like the difficulty level with which like that you supplement any other headset for your audio experience is just ridiculous and unwieldy.
Right.
And like, of course they're going to let you pair it to your existing AirPods that you already own.
Yeah.
Just plug them in and go. Like,
and don't sleep on the whole spatial audio thing. I don't know if you've experienced it or not, but in terms of making an experience feel incredibly real, audio has way more to do with it than people give it credit for.
Well,
and Apple has figured that out. They really have. And apparently you get the spatial audio capabilities even before you put the headphones in, which I remember when they announced spatial audio for like laptops, and I'm like, why? I don't have headphones on. I'm not like turning, like the device is right there. And then of course I tried it. I'm like, I have an orchestra in my room. It's surround sound, but plus.
Sure.
And you couple that now with the AR VR stuff, and you're sitting in a virtual world.
We were are we going to talk about the same experience?
Probably.
We were at a conference a couple months ago with a project that Paul and his team put together.
Oh, yeah.
And we were using Meta headsets, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And we had those jacked up to the highest volume. And in a conference center, it just couldn't. And the feedback time and time again was like, oh, well, it's just quiet. And people, I don't really feel like could get totally immersed in the sound because we agree with you 100%. So we had this, a lot of ambient sound like worked into it. We had this is going to sound strange. We had a piano player. We had people talking in the background. Then you had audio, but people just struggled the whole time.
The piano sound was spatial.
Mm-hmm.
And so like we had to instruct people, well, if you turn just right,
yeah,
you get an audio boost because your head is now aligned correctly. And sorry, that's what it takes because we're in a room of thousands of people.
Right.
And so it's kind of hard to hear over that.
And now imagine that experience with, your latest AirPods Pro with not just noise canceling, but a lot of ridiculous on-device intelligence about what noise to cancel and what noise to let through. They actually mentioned that in their keynote, separate from the VR, from the headset, where it's like, we can give you the combination of pass-through audio plus noise cancellation, so we'll let through sounds you want and keep out the ones you don't. That's insane.
Do you think these devices are still made like this is your device, you keep it? So like at the conference, we had those like liners because people get sweaty, but like I just like earpods really gross me out.
Well, I don't share mine with anyone.
Well, I understand that, but just like, like just when I see them like lying around my house, I'm like, oh, but like.
This is a new phobia that we discovered.
Yeah.
It is.
Hold on, I'm going to take my AirPods out and just hold them close to you and see what happens.
We need an experiment. Is it just AirPods?
How are you feeling now, Elizabeth?
These aren't AirPods, but do they invoke the same?
Top secret that I'm sharing online.
But
I don't have like earwax, and so like it grosses me out when I like.
Yeah, you don't need to see my AirPods.
When I see it.
The personalization of this device is actually something I've wondered about. I'm carrying an iPhone, and it is so my phone. Like I can't hand it to you, and apart from a handful of apps like Find My. You can't like log in as yourself and that phone becomes a device that you can productively use.
Yeah.
And I gotta think this is going to be much the same way. Like the enrollment process, they want you to scan your face. It's got to be tailored to your head and all of that stuff. Certainly for this first device, I don't see this being a multi-user device. The fact that the only way you get a multi-user iPad today is by being a kindergarten student and they have iPads they hand around.
Or I'm thinking
that's not something even in a family that you currently do, where like you share an iPad and can log in as yourself. There's no technical reason they couldn't do that. They just don't.
I just think about like the library. Like library is so good at making things accessible.
Sure.
And so they've got 3D printers and computers. You want to check out a microscope. So like it's an awesome way to get the good technology out into the community for others to try.
Yeah. Now my hope
Apple,
is
if you're listening, the library market really wants you to make a shift.
Apple seems to go back and forth in educational and the markets like that. For a while, they were the only game in town in terms of education. The Apple II, the Apple IIe, the 2C, things like that. people who had used a computer had used an Apple computer, and then they kind of fell away from
Oregon
that for a
Trail.
while. Yeah, you died of dysentery.
They released a
Typhoid
remake this
fever.
year.
What?
They released a remake this year.
I'm very excited.
There's been some of that again now with the iPad. They have a segment of the market, but compared to the penetration of something like Chromebooks, nothing. Like really nothing. I hope that since they're targeting enterprise industries, things like that, they're going to want to make it so that, hey, go grab the headset. I need to show you something on this device.
Right.
It won't have to be, everybody in the plant has to have their own custom headset. But it is Apple. They do not care how much money that they want you to spend.
I mean, and they are disruptors of the market time and time again. Yeah. I'm inclined to believe them. If they tell me they can sell this,
as this device becomes smaller and lighter, something that literally like glasses.
Mm-hmm.
We're not there yet. We're probably a decade away from that. Somebody write this down and come back and embarrass me in 2 years. But
there's a camera somewhere in this room.
Yeah. Eventually, it will simply be, if they are successful, if this space is successful, it will eventually be something that is just part of you. In the same way that, for good or ill, this is basically an extension of my brain at this point. Imagine the extension of your brain, like sitting on your brain. That's where they're clearly trying to head with this.
Google Glass was just too far ahead of its time.
Google Glass, I give them credit for, Google does a lot of experimentation out in the open.
Mm-hmm.
But I was talking about, the nerdiest of nerds. That's one you might as well have a big blinking neon sign or look at me, I'm the big dork. And
hi, Sonny.
Yeah. Nothing but love for the big dorks. Being a card carrying member, but they couldn't get the traction. However, there is some traction, even still with Google Glass, inside of industry.
Mm.
There are niches where that has happened. So it's not that it was a failure in terms of where it's ended up, but it was never going to be a mass market consumer device in the way that it was created and positioned. Some version of this could be.
So we are coming about to time. I'm going to give you each let's do a final wrap up. What is your big takeaway from the Vision Pro?
So for me, I'm not in the Apple ecosystem. It's not I'm looking at the barrier to entry for me. Like to make one of these headsets useful for me, $3,500 notwithstanding, I'm looking at $10,000 to make this useful.
Yeah. You got to buy high-end Mac. You've got to buy the headset. You got to get the lenses.
Got to get the AirPods. I got to get the Mac. Everything. And so for me, I don't know if this is the device for me. But one of the things Bill just mentioned was will this be a successful market? I'm excited and eager to see success for this product, if for no other reason to finally have folks see and really understand what we've been saying about this space for the last decade. Yeah. There are just ideas that we have wanted to create, but folks just haven't been able to get there with the idea of I'm not going to put something on my head. But now that we have folks who are deeply invested in one of the most popular lifestyle brands possibly ever, I think this is going to move the needle at least at scale for the industry, even if this one particular product doesn't make it.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to say. Is as much as I would love to, I'm probably not going to rush out and buy the first one of these, but I might buy the second one, and eventually, it's probably not that far away, I'll own the iteration of this product. And one of them is just because, man, this is really cool. Apple has a kind of spooky way of taking super dorky things and somehow making them cool. I don't know if you remember when AirPods were first introduced. I'm not going to put these little weird, it looks like
they dangle.
Yeah, why am I? And then 6 months later, I'm walking the streets of New York City, and every third person has white AirPods in their ear, and it went from being a thing that everybody's like, that looks weird, to of course I'm wearing these all day long. Now, I don't expect the ski mask to be a thing that people are wandering around in the world, but something And it probably isn't going to be all the way to this, but something between what they're demoing and this probably will end up being a thing that you begin to see out in the real world in a few years. And that is an amazing legitimization of the market that we're talking about, which has not been able to get traction. It really has not. As cool as the technology has been, as amazing as some of the experiences have been, because remember, like, I remember nearly a decade ago now being at the Sundance Film Festival, and they had several VR installations they had set up, and they were magnificent. They were so wonderful. I mean, they were clunky, they were awkward, super awkward compared to some of the things we can do now, but immersive, and some of them were really emotionally transformative. I mean, there was one display that had been put together by refugees of like war-torn areas, where they're putting you in the war zone, and you come out of that changed. So I've been hoping for things like this to be able to like get traction in the world. And whether it's this product or the next one or the fifth one down the road, Apple deciding to take their considerable billions of dollars and spend it year after year after year. And make no mistake, they've been doing this for well over a decade. This product is a culmination of things, not just in the other products they've had where they kind of Legoed them together, but they've been aiming toward this device for many, many years now. And the fact that they've been willing to do that, and now that they've publicly committed to it, they will spend another $100 billion on this device before it probably actually ends up getting consumer level traction, if it ever does. But a multi-trillion-dollar company, like Paul said, that has such cachet among its customer base, especially among the most rabid of its customer base, that has the strongest possibility we've seen so far of making this go from being a niche, nerdy, interesting thing for a very, very small segment of the population to something that just becomes part of our lives, the same way the smartphone has.
I think you're probably spot on. And with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap. Thank you very much for watching. Paul, Bill, thank you very much for joining us. If there's something that you would like to listen to these guys talk about, feel free to drop it in the comments.
Yeah,
and
I have opinions about literally everything.
Next time. Thank you.